Centuries before our common era, the Egyptians believed the universe sprang from a primeval ocean, the Nua boundless dark expanse where nothing yet existed. From this primordial sea arose Atum, the self-created god, whose first act was one of profound, intimate creation. In certain Memphite traditions, Atum masturbated upon the waters, and from his seed were born Shu, god of air, and Tefnut, goddess of moisture. Through this primal act of sexual creativity, Atum established cosmic harmony and balance upon which all life depended. This myth became more than story. It encoded a sacred truth. Sexuality was not taboo or sin, but the very engine of being. To Egyptian priests and priestesses, ritual sex reenacted Atum's primordial act, inviting divine potency into the temple and the world beyond. By channeling that creative force, they believed they upheld the cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, mirroring the daily rise and fall of Ra, the sun god, whose journey across the sky embodied death and regeneration. Within the precincts of temples dedicated to Ra Hathor and other deities of love and fertility, special chambers per Ankh, houses of life, housed these secret rites. Only the highest-ranking priests, sworn to lifelong secrecy, were permitted entry. Clad in white linens and crowned with lotus blossoms, they prepared by days of fasting, purification, and euphoric music, invoking Hathor, Lady of Joy, whose laughter and dance unlocked the primal energies of the flesh. One such ceremony, attested in the Temple of Dendera, involved the sacred lament for Osiris, a music-filled procession in which priestesses, embodying Isis, chanted hymns of loss and renewal. As the lament reached its crescendo, the high priest enacted the union of Isis and Osiris upon an altar carved with images of the union of heaven and earth. This ritual sex was not mere symbolism. It was believed to reanimate Osiris in the underworld, ensuring that the cycle of life would continue on land, air, and water. Yet, the most dramatic displays occurred during the Feast of the Valley, held under a full moon. Pilgrims flocked to Thebes, bearing offerings of grains and wine. After hours of drumming and dance, select priests and priestesses withdrew to hidden sanctuaries, where, by torchlight, they reenacted the divine bedchamber scene of Isis's reunion with her resurrected husband. Through their sacred embrace echoed the promise of renewal, not only for the deified couple, but for the fields of Upper Egypt and the people themselves. Records on temple walls and scattered papyri hint at specialized sexual implements, ornamental wands, polished stones, and lotus-shaped beads used to honor the gods and heighten the ritual's potency. Some texts veiled in euphemism describe the sacred longing and the joining of breath and blood, phrases that scholars today interpret as praise for erotic union as an act of devotion. By the time of the New Kingdom, such rites had become integral to temple life. Pharaohs, considered living gods, personally participated in Senatiba ritual of sacred marriage with the goddess. Clad in the leopard skin of the high priest, the king would lie upon a ceremonial bed, while a priestess, embodying Hathor or Mut, enacted the divine consummation. These rites reaffirmed his power and the land's fertility, forging an unbroken chain of divine blessing from heaven to earth. Thus, from the first myth of Atum's cosmic self-creation to the midnight unions beneath the moonlit sky, sexual rites in ancient Egypt were more than licentious indulgence. They were the very heartbeat of creation. They sustained Mat, guided the sun god's journey, and ensured that life would rise anew each dawn. Hathor, the cow lady, the gentle goddess of love, music, and dance, held a special place in the heart of ancient Egypt. Her temples brimmed with colorful reliefs of women and men playing sistrum rattles, dancing beneath her bovine gaze. Twice each year, during the festival of drunkenness, her devotees celebrated with wild abandon, reenacting the myth of Ra's temporary escape in the form of Sekhmet, his fiery lioness eye in retaliation for human pride. According to the legend, Ra's eye grew so rageful that she unleashed a murderous rampage upon mankind. To appease her, the other gods brewed vast quantities of beer, dyed red to resemble blood, and flooded the fields with it. Sekhmet, drunk on this crimson blood, fell into a deep stupor. This moment of divine intoxication, when wrath transformed into rapture, was mirrored in the temple precinct, where priestesses and consenting worshippers would drink, dance, and perhaps share clandestine erotic rites. Embodying Hathor's gentler embrace, within the inner sanctum of Dendera, A hidden chamber known as the Purank held the most secret ceremonies. Only those initiated through rigorous purification fasting, ritual bathing in the Nile, and recitations of incantations could enter. Walls lined with low benches opened onto a dais bearing a shallow basin fed by standing water from the sacred well. Here, the priestess of Hathor and a chosen acolyte enacted a symbolic marriage each dawn. Their joined bodies anointing the basin with oil and wine, offerings to the goddess. Beyond Dendera, at Philae in Nubia, the temple of Isis echoed similar rites. Each spring, as the Nile swelled, priestesses carried golden wands, carved with lotus blossom symbols of rebirth and led midnight processions. In the hush between chanted hymns, they enacted the inseparable union of Isis and Osiris, their flesh become a living altar. These rites, though hidden from most eyes, were believed to ensure that the Nile would flood and the fields prosper. Strikingly, some temples maintained what modern scholars term sacred prostitution, not in the sense of mercenary indulgence, but ritualized, consecrated sexual service to the goddess. In Edfu, priests were said to keep lists of devotees who volunteered for nightly rites during the Feast of the Beautiful Reunion, celebrating Horus's reunion with his mother Isis after avenging Osiris. Volunteers, male and female, were consecrated through oaths, dedicating their bodies as vessels of divine power. Texts carved on temple walls speak of the Great Union, the hieroglyphic euphemism for sacramental intercourse. Participants wore crowns of papyrus and lotus, symbolizing Lower and Upper Egypt united. Hymns praised the rushing of waters and the sweetness of union. Metaphors for both the inundation of the Nile and the joining of bodies as a blessing upon the land. Artisans sculpted ivory and alabaster implementscups, flutes, and phallic wands believed to channel the life force of the gods. These sacred tools were anointed with kifi incense, a fragrant blend of honey, resins, and spices, said to arouse both divine and mortal desire. During the ritual, the air would hang thick with its sweet smoke, as temple musicians played the reed pipe and frame drum, guiding participants toward an ecstatic convergence of body and spirit. By the late period, Greek and Roman observers, Herodotus among them, write on these rites with a mixture of fascination and moralizing judgment. Though they misunderstood much, their writings confirm that Egyptian sexuality, far from private sin, was woven into the very fabric of worship. Thus, from sleep-steeped sanctuaries by the Nile to the moonlit courtyards of Thebes, the sexual rites of Hathor and Isis stood as living hymns to fertility, abundance, and divine harmony. Osiris, once king of Egypt and beloved husband of Isis, fell victim to the treachery of his brother Set, who scattered his corpse across the land. Grief-stricken, Isis journeyed the length of the Nile, gathering each piece. Guided by her unwavering devotion, she reassembled him, invoking potent spells of resurrection. According to the Book of the Dead and temple inscriptions, Isis then embraced her husband's restored body, conceiving their son Horus, divine heir, whose birth symbolized renewal after death. This sacred conception formed the heart of the annual Mysteries of Osiris festival observed at Abydos. Pilgrims from across Egypt trekked to the ruined city, believed to house Osiris's tomb. At dusk, they gathered in procession, bearing torches and effigies of the god. A priest, robed in green linen of resurrection, lay upon a stone bier, representing the dead king. A priestess, embodying Isis, ascended the bier, her voice raised in mournful song. Under the veil of darkness, she reenacted the secret embrace that reawakened Osiris's spirit. Although the precise movements were veiled in ritual secrecy, later Greek accounts hint at a deeply moving union. The lament would give way to a sudden shift in tona, celebratory hymn, as life surged back. Anointing oils and libations were poured over the altar, symbolizing the flow of divine essence. Through this reenactment, participants believed they too partook in the death and rebirth cycle, ensuring their own passage from this world into the afterlife with Osiris. In Memphis, the festival took a different shape. Here, the Apis Bula, another living manifestation of Osiris, lay. In state, when the bull died, priests mummified it, building a temple around its remains. During the sacred union rites, a priestess would join a man dressed as the new Apis, symbolizing the reanimation of Osiris in bovine form. Through their union, the regenerative force of the bull god was renewed, blessing the fields with fertility. Archaeological finds at Deir el-Medina reveal more personal household observances. Workers' huts contained small figurines depicting couples in embrace, inscribed with prayers for fertility and protection. These intimate votive offerings suggest that sexual rites once reserved for temple elites also permeated daily life and acknowledgement that human sexuality mirrored the divine process. Even in tombs, erotic imagery adorned the walls. Tomb of Senemit in Thebes shows couples entwined, their bodies framed by papyrus reeds. Scholars have debated whether these scenes served as instructions for ritual practices or, more broadly, celebrations of love's power to transcend mortality. Whatever the case, they stand as testament to an ethos in which sex, far from profane, was the very substance of magic. By the Ptolemaic era, Egypt's sexual mysteries attracted visitors from across the Mediterranean. Pilgrims inscribed graffiti in Greek on temple walls, hoping to receive a blessing for conception or a safe passage through Hades. Although later Christian authorities sought to suppress these rites as immoral, they endured hidden in folk rituals and Coptic hymns, echoing the ancient themes of love's triumph over death.